Teacher kept in freezer for 105 days shocks the world. Hello there. One day, an elementary school teacher embarked on a long journey. More than half a year has passed since, yet her parents hadn't seen her in person despite receiving occasional messages from her. However, the couple's unease grew with each passing day. Eventually, a piece of news from the police left them almost speechless. What exactly happened? On February 1st, 2017, a Wednesday, Mr. Yang Ganlian turned 60. In China, the 60th birthday holds special significance. So many friends and family gathered to celebrate with him. Strangely, on such an important day, his daughter, Yang Liben, and her husband, Zhu Xiaodong, were absent. Over the next 6 months, Yang and his wife repeatedly called their daughter, but no one answered. Occasionally, when the phone did connect, there was only silence on the other end. Liben explained over WeChat that her phone was damaged and couldn't make voice calls. Whenever Yang invited her to dine with them, she would decline, citing work obligations or travels for business. A few days before, Liben messaged her mother on WeChat, saying she was in Hong Kong with friends and would return to celebrate with the family on the second day of the new year. Yet, it was now the 5th day, and she still hadn't returned. Unable to reach her, the elderly couple grew increasingly worried. It was a special occasion, and no matter how busy she was, she should have been there. Besides, they hadn't seen their daughter recently. A deep sense of foreboding filled Yang's mind. At 5 p.m., he was informed that something had happened to Liben and that they needed to come to the police station. What had happened? Liben was born in November 1987, a native of Shanghai and the only child of her devoted parents. Known for her gentle nature, Liben rarely had conflicts with others and would always handle her struggles independently. After high school, she enrolled in the Chinese literature department at Shanghai Normal University. Upon graduation, she joined a local junior high school, eventually becoming a language arts teacher for elementary students. This school was well regarded in Shanghai, and securing a teaching position there required rigorous rounds of selection. Fortunately, Liben's talent and dedication helped her excel, and soon she became a class advisor. Introduced by friends, Liben and Dong began a relationship after a year of getting to know each other. Dong, also born in November 1987 and from Shanghai, came from a humble background with parents who frequently argued. When Dong was 10, his parents divorced, and he lived with his mother. Later, his aunt and grandmother passed away in a car accident. His mother then took responsibility for raising his aunt's younger sister and daughter. Lacking parental guidance, Dong developed a gaming addiction, and his academic performance suffered. During high school, he was involved in a robbery on the main avenue. He was apprehended, but, as he was a minor, was released on probation. After high school, Dong attended a vocational school. At 19, he left and entered the workforce, taking up various jobs in department stores, but his stints were always brief. Dong wasn't entirely aimless. He had one notable asset: his good looks. He paid great attention to his style and grooming, leaving neighbors impressed by his appearance. They admired his striking looks and refined manner, mistaking him for a well-educated individual. Dong worked as a salesperson, but he often quit within months, moving on to other jobs. Finally, he decided to work at a foreign department store, where his monthly salary was around 3,000 to 4,000 yuan. At this point, Dong seemed to relish the spotlight. For Dong, who had grown up idolizing pop culture, such a lifestyle was unsatisfactory. Despite his modest income, he always dressed fashionably. He loved to socialize and often took different girls out to experience the nightlife, living a lavish and indulgent lifestyle. Dong's good looks made him popular with many women, and he found living off his appearance enjoyable. He frequented bars and used credit cards to buy expensive fashion and jewelry to maintain his image as a successful man. He pursued the goal of attracting beautiful, wealthy women, enjoying their company, and spending their money, often pretending to be romantically involved with multiple women simultaneously. Due to his frequent spending on luxury items, he accumulated significant debts. In 2012, Libin, then 25, was introduced to Dong through a mutual friend. Libin fell for Dong at first sight. To her, Dong seemed like an idol, a cool guy with flawless looks. However, her family knew nothing about this. At first, Libin kept her relationship with Dong a secret from her parents. But during a wedding she attended, she posted a photo of herself and Dong on social media, which revealed everything. The picture showed Libin holding Dong's hand, smiling sweetly, while Dong, beside her, wore a white shirt, a black suit, and a flower pinned to his chest, looking dapper and elegant. However, Libin's family didn't approve of Dong. Dong had visited their home a few times, but he was always quiet, responding only with short answers when questioned. After eating, he would go straight to Libin's room. In terms of social standing, Libin held a university degree, whereas Dong only had a vocational certificate and hadn't graduated. Both were locals of Shanghai, but Libin's family was much better off financially. Additionally, Libin was a diligent teacher with a stable job, while Dong led a carefree life in Shanghai's nightlife. They had nothing in common, yet Libin was deeply captivated by Dong. At the end of 2015, Libin and Dong registered their marriage. By the end of May the following year, they held a wedding reception at a Marriott hotel near the square. Dong's family was not well off, so they only held a small event with 7 tables. Libin didn't wear a traditional wedding gown. Instead, she wore a white mesh top with jeans, while Dong donned a formal suit. After marriage, Libin moved in with Dong's family in an old apartment in Hongkou District, Shanghai, built in the 1950s. Their unit, apartment 404, was 35 square meters, with a kitchen at the entrance, 1 bedroom, a bathroom, and a small balcony. If Dong could marry someone like Libin, a girl from a good family, attractive, and with a stable career, he should have cherished her like a precious gem. But reality was the opposite. Dong completely controlled Libin, and after they married, she followed his every command. She even got a tattoo as a token of her love for him. The newlyweds invited both families for a meal. Afterward, Libin and Dong visited her family, but her father was out, leaving only her mother at home. Libin's mother wanted to keep them for a meal, but they declined. This was the last time her mother saw her daughter. Later, on October 7, 2016, Libin's mother received a message from her daughter on WeChat. "Mom, today's my birthday. Dong and I are planning to go on a trip. After his birthday, I'll invite both families for a meal." Her mother found it odd, as she knew her daughter had a good relationship with her husband, yet she had never heard her call him Dong. Thinking it was a new nickname, she didn't give it much thought. Libin's birthday was November 22nd, and a week later, on November 28th, was Dong's. Libin's parents planned to hold a birthday dinner for her at a restaurant, but for some reason, she declined. Right before Libin's birthday, her beloved pet cat of over 10 years passed away. Her mother shared the sad news on WeChat, and Libin responded with a crying emoji, saying she was too far away to return. Afterward, Libin's mother called her daughter several times, but Libin either didn't answer or had her phone turned off. Her mother grew frustrated and messaged, asking why Libin wouldn't pick up. Libin came up with various excuses to delay meeting. A few days before Christmas, Libin's parents knitted sweaters for their daughter and son-in-law and went to Libin's cousin's house, located in the same complex, to see Libin. When they arrived at her door, no one answered, so they decided to wait at her cousin's place. However, on both occasions, the daughter told her parents that she was in the suburbs and couldn't come back. Later, she said she would return in the afternoon, but they waited until nightfall without seeing her. Libin then explained that Dong had developed severe mouth ulcers and was undergoing treatment at a hospital, so they couldn't return. When New Year's came, Libin messaged her mother saying she would spend the holiday in Hong Kong with Dong, and would return to celebrate with them on the second day of the Lunar New Year. On that second day, her parents waited all day at home but didn't see her. Libin messaged them on WeChat, saying her flight had been delayed. Then, on February 1st, 2017, the 5th day of the Lunar New Year and also Libin's father's 60th birthday, Dong's mother was supposed to join the family celebration at 3 p.m. However, at 1 p.m., Dong's mother received a shocking message from her son, leaving both parents in utter disbelief. Just 3 months after their marriage, he had killed his wife. In a state of shock, Dong's parents immediately went to the couple's home and demanded to know where Libin was. Dong pointed towards the balcony, saying she was in the freezer. His mother nearly fainted from the horror. After regaining her composure, she urged him to go to the police station and turn himself in. Libin's parents arrived at the station shortly after, only to receive the devastating news that their daughter had been murdered. What added to their anguish was discovering that Libin, their gentle and loving daughter, had died 3 months earlier, and her killer was none other than her husband, Dong, who had once sworn to cherish her forever. But what could have led to such a horrific act? According to Dong, he and Libin often argued over trivial matters. She sometimes complained about the meals he cooked or the things he bought. Libin had confided to friends about her husband's stinginess and how he disliked her interacting with her friends. Dong exercised tight control over Libin, forbidding her from traveling alone or talking to other men, leading to many arguments. At one point, he even deleted WeChat from her phone. While Dong imposed strict rules on Libin, he couldn't control his own behavior. Just 6 months after they married, Libin discovered he was secretly involved with several other women, telling them he was single and even engaging in romantic encounters with some. When Libin found out, they had a huge fight. Dong admitted his wrongdoing, apologizing tearfully and begging for forgiveness. He even wrote a commitment letter, promising to be loyal, refrain from texting others, and allowing Libin to check his phone whenever she wanted. One day, Libin asked to renovate the old apartment that Dong's mother had left behind. But Dong refused to provide any money, telling Libin to find her own way to cover the cost. These repeated arguments wore Dong down mentally and physically. Having never felt deeply connected to Libin, he grew frustrated when she stopped financially supporting him and barred him from seeing other women. This frustration soon turned into thoughts of divorce. On August 25th, they had another intense argument and went to a notary office to start divorce proceedings. But at the office, Libin threatened to harm herself if they proceeded. She wasn't ready to end the marriage so hastily. She still believed Dong was a good man who occasionally made mistakes. Unbeknownst to her, this attempt to prevent the divorce solidified Dong's intent to end her life. A few days later, after the failed divorce attempt, Dong ordered 2 books online titled The Hand of the Magician and Philosophy of Death, containing crime accounts and advice on hiding bodies in freezers. Subsequently, Dong bought a 202-liter freezer and placed it on the balcony, installing a security camera pointed at it so he would receive a phone alert whenever someone approached the freezer. On October 15th, Dong took Libin on a trip to Hangzhou. However, they soon clashed again, this time over the fact that Dong hadn't booked the hotel Libin preferred. Consequently, they cut their trip short and decided to return to Shanghai the next day. During their journey back, Dong could only secure regular train tickets, not high-speed ones, leading to yet another heated argument. 2 days after returning from Hangzhou on October 17, 2016, at around 10 a.m., Dong awoke to hear Libin grumbling beside him. Frustrated beyond tolerance, he suddenly attacked, strangling Libin until she stopped breathing. He then retrieved a blanket from the wardrobe, wrapped her body in it, and placed it in the freezer on the balcony. After that, Dong cleaned the scene and transferred the entire sum of 42 million yuan into his own account. He also used Libin's identity to take out several loans of varying amounts, amassing over 561 million yuan in total. During the 105 days from Libin's death until the discovery, Dong frequently used Libin's ID to rent rooms with various women. He spent all the money on travel, shopliving, and dating. To create the illusion that his wife was still alive, Dong used Libin's WeChat account to send messages to friends and often updated her status. Whenever someone tried to call or initiate a voice chat, Dong would impersonate Libin's tone, claiming her phone was broken and that she could only text. The night before his confession, Dong played Arena of Valor all night, from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. During that time, he only left home once, to dispose of his wife's phone and ID by throwing them into a river. Then he returned to continue gaming. That same night, he tried to hang himself using the clothes rack on the balcony, but the rack broke, thwarting his suicide attempt. As dawn broke, on his father-in-law's 60th birthday, Dong realized he could no longer keep his secret. After an intense inner struggle, he confessed everything to his parents and then went with them to the police to turn himself in. Upon hearing the news of their daughter's death, Libin's parents were devastated. For elderly parents, burying a young loved one, especially on a birthday, is an incomprehensible tragedy. They harbored a deep resentment toward Dong, refusing any apology or compensation from his family, Libin only for Dong to face the full extent of the law. Dong's mother, meanwhile, was also distraught upon learning her son was the killer. However, she believed her precious child didn't commit murder on purpose, but had caused a fatal accident. She even placed part of the blame on Libin, claiming she had driven her son to lose control. In her eyes, Dong was a well-behaved, timid child who could never do something like this. So she hired a lawyer to defend him. When Dong told his lawyer that he had accidentally strangled Libin, the lawyer questioned why he hadn't tried to save her. Dong explained that he thought about calling emergency services, but when he realized Libin had stopped moving, he felt overwhelmed by fear and helplessness. He observed her for 3 hours before confirming her death and placing her body in the freezer. When news of the case broke, it quickly drew national attention, with Dong's mother being criticized online as an excessively indulgent mother lacking a sense of right and wrong. In June 2020, Dong was executed by law. He ended his life of crime over 1,300 days after turning himself in. On June 4th, Libin's family posted on Weibo, "From the day of the incident on October 17, 2016, until today, more than 3 years and 6 months have passed. We waited too long. Time dragged on. We held on, all for justice and fairness. Looking back at the case, it's evident that an incompatible marriage was a key factor leading to this tragedy. In life, a marriage lacking in common background or education can often create negative emotions, dissatisfaction, and tension. On the other hand, this tragedy was partly due to a mother's excessive indulgence toward her son. In childhood, a child lacks the ability to discern right from wrong. As the first teachers in their lives, parents not only need to teach basic life principles, but also, more importantly, guide them on how to live. Imparting moral values and instilling awareness is essential to raising a generation with character. And that concludes today's case. What are your thoughts on this case? Feel free to leave your comments below this video. If you enjoyed, please support us by liking the video and subscribing to our channel to follow more intriguing cases. Thank you, goodbye, and see you next time.